What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the new Tempest Razorback AR. It's looking like it's pretty good. I got this thing hand tested today through private matches and got all the stats tested through movement speed, damage profile, all that. I don't have the attachments yet. I'm going to wait for sim on that as usual, but I do have the base stats all hand tested by me. So let's go through it today and we should be able to get a pretty good idea of where it fits in the meta. First up, let's quickly go through the base stats. So, got the Tempest Razorback in this first column, the ISO Hemlock in the second column, and then the Cronin Squall in the third column. Quick note on what's up to date on TGD. So, it has basically been confirmed. I went into live plunder matches yesterday with two different accounts and shot myself with different weapons to make sure that I was interpreting the patch notes correctly on the armor damage change. So, if you guys watched my patch notes video yesterday, there was a line in the patch notes that said something along the lines of the armor damage values had been changed to just min and max damage values. So no longer is it min and max armor damage. The min and max armor damage are now just applied to the whole health pool. So your base health and your armor damage in Warzone only. That's not true in multiplayer. So it's just in Warzone, which makes it difficult for me to test. But I was able to queue into the same match with two separate accounts on two different PCs yesterday and test that out. And it appears that that is the case. It's not 100% across the board yet for sure that way, but I did test multiple weapons and they all were that way. So at this point, we are working under the assumption that that is the case across the board. Um, Also, the Cronin Squall has not been updated. I haven't updated any of the specific weapons that were changed in the patch. I think only a couple weapons were changed, like the Fennec and the Cronin. So those are not updated on TGD. They will be tomorrow. That's gonna be my goal for tomorrow. But today I tested both the new SMG and the new AR and got those up on TGD and base stats. But back to this, I just wanted to compare base stats so you guys can get a feel for how this thing fits in with the other weapons. So ADS movement speed is a little bit slower than the ISO Hemlock and the Cronin Squall. It has much better ADS time though than both of them. So 213 milliseconds versus 250, 285. Quite a bit better ADS time. It feels like it's pretty snappy for an AR. Bullet velocity, this is a placeholder. I wait for sim on that because it's muzzle velocity and I can't actually test muzzle velocity. I could compare my tested values to what the muzzle velocity was for other weapons and back calculate it with an estimation that way, but it's just not worth it. I'm just going to wait for that number to come out. Fire rate, 830 rounds per minute, so it shoots very fast. It's a very fast firing weapon compared to the ISO at 600 and the Cronin Squall at 674. Movement speeds 4.65 meters per second versus 4.7 on the Hemlock and 4.49 on the Squall. So it's a little bit faster than the Squall, but a little bit slower than the Hemlock. Reload time is pretty slow, 2.8 seconds. That is with a fully empty mag. There are different reload times in the game, but that's the fully empty mag reload time. So that matches the Squall, but is quite a bit slower than the Hemlock. But it's partially empty mag. Reload time is actually very fast, at least for the smaller magazines. So that's kind of a little misleading there to be 2.8 seconds because I just don't show the other one on TGD. Sprint speed is pretty fast, 6.08. It's quite a bit faster than the Hemlock and the Cronin Squall. Attack sprint speed is a little slower than the Hemlock, but a little bit faster than the Squall. The Squall is a pretty heavy gun, especially once you put attachments on. It's very slow. So the Razorback in general is going to be quite a bit faster than the Squall was in the previous meta. Sprint to fire times were also very fast. For some reason, the Cronin Squall also had very fast sprint to fire times, 140 and 250. This is a number that's harder for me to test just because it happens so quickly and it's kind of hard to see when it starts when I'm doing manual testing. So these values definitely will get updated once the data mine numbers come out. But for now, I can get within probably like 2 frames, so like 8 milliseconds pretty consistently. So sprint to fire time is pretty fast on the Razorback, which means it could make a really fantastic sniper support. And you might even be able to get it down into like the SMG category if you stack the right attachments. Quick recoil comparison here. I'm going to jump in the game as well and talk about this in a second. But in the red, we have the new Tempest Razorback. So you can see it has kind of this S shape at the start, and then it's kind of straight after that. But it does have this S curve at the beginning. The Hemlock just kind of goes up and to the right slowly, and then the Cronin Squall just went straight up and then straight up to the left after the first like 8 shots or so. So remember, the Razorback does shoot much faster than both the Hemlock and the Squall, which means the actual amount of recoil that you feel like you're controlling has to be basically like the size of the recoil multiplied by how fast it's firing, because that's how fast you have to move your mouse or how far down you have to hold your stick to correct for that recoil. So this is actually quite a bit of recoil. But one thing you will notice here is, imagine you drew like a curve fit of this line. The bullets all stick extremely well to that. So it's not bouncing unexpectedly around. You can see that both the Hemlock and the Squall have much more of that bounciness around that expected line as they go up. So that's a big plus for the Tempest Razorback. That's something that the Commando foregrip in Warzone 1 with the Modern Warfare 19 weapons helped with a ton, and that's why one of the reasons why it was such a meta attachment is that it really helped with that. But the Tempest Razorback by default has very, very low bounciness. Something else I want to mention, I did update the code yesterday to work with using the base min and max armor damage values across all the health pools. So that is up to date on TGD, and I do have 300 health on there, so you guys can start looking at TGD for real answers. The only guns that aren't updated, like I said, are the ones that were changed in this patch, and I think it was only 2 or 3 weapons that really got changed, the Squall being one of them. The reason I'm using it in the comparison still here is because I feel like we got a good feel for what it felt like in terms of time to kill and how it played. So I think it's still a good thing to compare to, even though the actual numbers for it are not correct on TGD anymore. We just have a good feeling for what that is. So I've got it set to 300 health, time to kill, combination shots. You can see in the first damage range with combination shots, the Tempest Razorback has a little bit less damage range than the Hemlock, but much better time to kill all the way out to about 43 meters where its second drop off is. And then from there on, it's pretty close to the Hemlock, still a little bit faster out at long ranges. Compared to the Squall is just faster everywhere, but that's probably a good thing because the Razorback is faster ADS. It has, much easier to control recoil, in my opinion, compared to the Squall. The Squall was very jumpy, and when you have that slower fire rate with high amounts of recoil, it can make it feel really bouncy and just kind of hard to control. But the Razorback has very fast fire rate, so like the amount of recoil between each bullet and the amount of shake between each shot is pretty low comparatively. So let's jump in and look at the actual recoil of this thing. But looking at the time to kill so far, it looks like a very competitive weapon, especially for sniper support. And if we can get it to have low enough recoil, it'll be competitive probably in the long range meta as well. It's not going to have a very good time to kill, so I could see some LMGs or something else coming into the meta instead of the Razorback for all Mazrah. But for the smaller maps, I think the Razorback will be probably one of the absolute top tier choices. We have to really analyze this further, but for now, it looks like it is going to be very good. All right, so I've built out the Razorback here and gone into the firing range with what I think will be one of the better long range builds. Pretty much in this game, most people are running the 1x optics on all the guns, and that's because the higher zoom optics don't have any of that bounciness reduction or actual recoil reduction like they did in Warzone 1. So that makes them really difficult to use because you zoom in, which means you get a bunch more effective recoil that you have to try to control, and it's just most people just like using 1x's. So what's cool about the Razorback is it actually has really good iron sights. So you can see it has a very thin reticle, if you want to call it that, at the end, and then the back posts, the ring is pretty wide open too. So really good iron sights here, and I have no problem at all just absolutely beaming that last target with this gun. It definitely has more recoil than like the Hemlock, so the Hemlock's still going to be better at really long ranges. It also is going to have probably pretty comparable damage per mag with the 45 on the Hemlock versus the 60 on the Razorback, and that's just because the Razorback shoots so much faster that the damage per bullet is much lower. But yeah, this thing feels pretty good to me. It's pretty accurate. I think it could be a contender for long range just because it's going to be better up close, which even on a long range gun, out to 50 meters, you're still going to have to use it every now and then. And it kills so much faster than the other options like the Hemlock in that range. And then it's also going to be somewhat competitive at range, and the recoil is pretty manageable. At least on mouse and key, it feels very good to me. So this is the build I was just showing on the firing range that I was using. I've got the Komodo Heavy. This is the muzzle that helps with horizontal recoil the most. So because we get an extra attachment slot because the iron sights are so good, I've got a barrel on here, which normally I wouldn't use a barrel, but this helps with bullet velocity and recoil control. So that's going to be extra recoil control. This thing has a lot of actual recoil that you have to control, so that's why it's really important to have that extra attachment, I think. FPSKrieger seems to help with the visual and also helps with aiming stability, which is this gun seems to have pretty bad aim sway. So bad aim sway, FPSKrieger seems to help with both visual and regular recoil and the aim sway. So that's a big plus there. High velocity, obviously, for bullet velocity and 60 round mag. The reason I go with Komodo Heavy as the maximum horizontal reduction is because, at least on mouse and key, it's much easier for me to just pull my mouse straight down to control recoil than it is to deal with that S-shaped curve that I showed you in the recoil plot. So Komodo Heavy just kind of shrinks that S shape to be less of a big S and more of just like a little tiny S. So that helps with that part of the recoil, which is really important. The first few shots have that S shape, and then after that, it's just up to the right. So it's really important to get that out in the first few shots, because the first few shots are generally like some of the most important for any gunfight. So yeah, that would be the long range build I think I would recommend for all Mazrah right now before we actually have all the stats. I do want to mention this does have some unique barrels. So it has this 13-inch Frenzy barrel. So let's look at that in the firing range real fast. So with this Frenzy barrel, it comes with a red dot sight. So if you're trying to build it as like a sniper support or something, that barrel has a red dot sight built in. So you get better ADS time, gonna hurt your damage range, hip fire accuracy, bullet velocity. But if ADS time is really important, then you can actually get a reduction in that while still having an optic, which is pretty cool. Then it also has this 17-inch IO XL barrel, and this has a built-in. Basically, it has a. I haven't checked the zoom amount, but I can tell that it's less than that changing affected to independent threshold that I've talked about before. So it's probably kind of like the Schlager 3.4x in that way. So quite a bit of zoom there, and you can see with this, it makes the effective recoil so much harder to control that even on mouse and key, I have a little bit hard time hitting that last target consistently. I can still do it, but if I had to hold the trigger down for more than like 30 shots with 300 health now, I'm gonna probably have to use like 45 bullets on average to kill someone at that range. I really only have enough room to pull down for like the first 20 or so shots with my fingertips on my mouse. So I don't think I'll be using this, but it is an option and you should check it out because it is a good barrel and it does give you that extra slot because it comes with a built-in optic. Now, if I was going to build this more as a sniper support, which I think it will make a fantastic sniper support, I'd probably do something like this. So we've swapped to the FTech Castle Comp. This has like more horizontal reduction than vertical, but it also still has some vertical. So I think that's a solid option for using this as a, because you don't have other attachments to help with recoil with this build. I think it's good to get the vertical recoil down a little bit as well. But honestly, all these muzzles are fantastic. So it's very much personal preference which one of the recoil reduction muzzles you use. Try them all out and see which one feels the best. If you're someone who has more difficulty with vertical rather than horizontal, in general, I'd say horizontal is more important just because it gets the wiggles out of it, like I talked about earlier. Um, but yeah, it's personal preference. They're all great in their own way. Still a 60 round mag, and then we basically got sprint to fire reduction, aiming stability, and ADS reduction attachments on the rest of the slots. So we got the FSS Olay laser. This is aim down sight and sprint to fire. Cassis X rear grip, sprint to fire, and ADS. Again, hurts your recoil, which again is why it's important to have one of those muzzles that I think helps with vertical as well as horizontal, kind of overcome that recoil control hurt. And then for the comb, we have the LTX Eclipse. Again, this is sprint to fire and aim down sight speed. It is going to hurt your aim walking speed, which is not good because that's a pretty important stat, I think, for most sniper supports and SMG situations. But I do think it's a pretty good attachment still. So if we go into the firing range with this, you're going to see the ADS is very snappy ADS overall. I mean, it's not as fast as an SMG, but it's still pretty fast. And the recoil is very manageable still. I can still hit all these targets pretty easily. Yeah, I think overall it's a great gun. I think it's going to be one of the best sniper supports for sure. And it might even sneak into the long range meta. All right, guys, like I said, TGD is calculating time to kill on the charts correctly now. So you can go check that out with the updated 300 health and the updated armor damage being actually just overall damage. Tempest Razorback is up with no attachments. I might actually copy the attachments over from another gun, and then I'll update them later if they need to be changed. But for the most part, the attachments with the same name in this game have the same stats across the board. So I might try to get those up tonight, maybe tomorrow. The ISO 45, the new SMG, is also up on TGD. That's what tomorrow's video will be on. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If you guys like the content, don't forget to give a thumbs up. Comment about the new guns, what you think about them. I think they're pretty great overall. And again, if you want to support, the best way to support is a premium subscription on TrueGameData.com. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.